Yeah, desperate times call for desperate measures, don't they? And today we're seeing just how far the government will go to fight this health pandemic. An historic move to avoid depression, giving employers $130 billion to pay our wages. A new stage of restrictions are enforced this morning. Police enforcing the two-person gathering rule from today. Tighter security measures on Queensland's borders to make it harder for non-residents to enter the state. And Prince Charles is out and about already, just 1 week after testing positive.
OK, and we're seeing early but optimistic signs from the rate of new cases. Yesterday, we recorded our lowest daily increase in more than a week. In total, there are 4,250 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Australia. The vast majority of those are in New South Wales at 1,918. Victoria is next with 821 diagnoses. Authorities are concerned about clusters in the city's inner east. Queensland has 689, with the West Moreton region, including Ipswich, emerging as a new hotspot for cases. South Australia has recorded 305, WA 355 and the Northern Territory 15. The ACT and Tasmania have now both recorded their first deaths with 78 and 69 cases respectively.
We have special coverage this morning with our team of reporters. First to Kerry Axley in Canberra, where the government has made an historic move to protect Aussie jobs. Kerry, good morning to you. Who is eligible for the wage subsidy?
Yeah, good morning, Carl. This is support for 6 million Australian workers for up to 6 months, $1,500 a fortnight, paid by employers, paid to employers, so they can keep paying employees. This will be available from the first week in May. It'll be backdated to March. It is for full-time workers, part-time workers, some casual workers who've been with their employer for 12 months or more. It is for the not-for-profit sector. It is also for charities and big business, excluding the big banks. Employers with a turnover of less than $1 billion need to prove a 30% loss in revenue since March 1st. It is a little bit higher for big business.
Our JobKeeper plan sees every Australian worker the same way, no matter what you earn. There is not more support for some than there is for others. That is not the Australian way. If one person falls on a hard time, if anyone falls on a hard time, it's the same hard time. We're all in this together. That's what's fair. That's what's Australian.
The Commonwealth, including the contribution from the Reserve Bank, has spent over $300 billion in a matter of weeks trying to save jobs and the economy, and it will likely have to spend more, Carl.
Kerry Axley, thank you.
New social rules come into effect around the country this morning, with Australians facing hefty fines if they do the wrong thing. Let's go to Today Melbourne reporter Christina Hearn. And Chris, can you take us through this next phase?
Well, Ali, I'm here at the 10, one of Melbourne's most popular running tracks, and normally you'd see large groups of people walking or jogging together, but as of midnight, it is banned to gather for more than 2 people to gather. And if you need a reminder, there's one just over my shoulder on the tree. As for what penalties you're going to face, well, that really depends on what state you're in. Here in Victoria, we've got the toughest penalties. So you will get an on-the-spot fine of $1,600 if you break the law. For businesses, it is up to $10,000. Here in Victoria, we are officially in a Stage 3 shutdown, and the tough talking Premier not ruling out moving to Stage 4 restrictions if people continue to break the rules, and police will be patrolling public places like the Tan today to make sure people comply.
It's nice to see that tree behind you taking precautions too, Chris. Thanks.
Queensland's border security will be bolstered by the end of the week, with new measures to deter thousands still visiting the Sunshine State. Jess Millwood has more from the border at Coolangatta. Good morning, Jess. Permits will be the deciding factor here.
Good morning to you, Alex. That's right. From Friday, if you do not have a permit, you will not be passing over the Queensland border. When history was made last Thursday, Queensland border closing off to the rest of the country, there were a few exceptions. If you were coming from interstate, you were still being allowed to come into Queensland. However, if you were coming for a holiday or for non-work purposes, you were being made to quarantine for 14 days. Well, it has been revealed 1,100 holidaymakers have since come into the state, and it's simply tying up too many resources, making sure that these people apply. So from now on, that won't be happening. And if you do wish to come into Queensland, you must have a permit that shows that you need to come here for work purposes. There will be big fines for people that don't abide by the new rules. In fact, the Police Commissioner is encouraging people to dob in those they believe are not doing the right thing. As the Premier so bluntly put it yesterday, now is not the time to be having fun. Alex.
Jess Millwood, thank you. 3 more crew members have been medically evacuated off the doomed Ruby cruise ship off the coast of Sydney. That's the Ruby Princess, and taken to hospital. 3 others were rescued on Sunday night, with 1 now fighting for life in hospital, while 189 passengers have tested positive to COVID-19 across Australia. It comes as hundreds have spent their first night in quarantine on Rottnest Island after being rescued off a ship off the coast of Western Australia. Hundreds of Australians are still stranded on cruise ships across the world. Australians in Bali are being told to come home now, while commercial flights are still available or risk being stranded for months. The government is warning that it has no plans to evacuate Australians who are still in Indonesia.
It's going to get bad in Indonesia. Some returned travellers in quarantine in luxury hotels across the country are slamming the conditions this morning. Let's go to today's Sydney reporter Gabrielle Boyle at the Intercontinental. Gabby, some say they feel like prisoners.
Yeah, absolutely, Carl. They've checked into some of the fanciest hotels in Australia, hotels that many Australians will never be able to afford to stay at, and yet they say they're being treated like prisoners. They disembarked from those aeroplanes at Sydney International Airport yesterday, and they were greeted by soldiers and police, loaded onto those buses with the social distancing in between those seats, and taken to several hotels across Sydney, where they've been placed in quarantine for the next 14 days. These people won't be able to leave their hotel rooms. They're trapped inside. Their linen is being delivered to the front door. They're not receiving any services beside the bare minimum. Their food is being dropped at the door. Some are saying the food is cold, it's not appropriate. We've had some vegans complaining that their dietary needs aren't being respected. So certainly plenty of complaints. Others are saying they can't get any fresh air. Whole families are being kept in very small rooms. But of course, many will argue it's a very small price to pay to prevent corona spreading further through our community. Carl?
Thanks, Gabby.
Landmarks in New York City are being transformed into makeshift hospitals in a troubling sign of the severity of the pandemic. US correspondent Alexis Daish is in Central Park this morning. And Lexi, just how will these hospitals work?
Well, Ali, as you can see, they are well and truly underway now. Wall-to-wall tents in the heart of Central Park. This field hospital will add 68 beds to what is a struggling health system. There is one tent that is specifically the ICU unit. That's this one. Let's come in and have a look. There are 10 beds in here for the critically ill patients that are suffering from COVID-19. Every bed here is equipped with a ventilator. This is what the ventilators look like here. This is, of course, the most critical medical supply that this city just is in such desperate need of. So, as I said, 10 beds here for the critically ill patients. This field hospital, we're told, will be up and running as of tomorrow. You can see these are all the volunteer nurses making sure that all the equipment is working okay. And from tomorrow, they will be taking in patients. The agency that has set this up, Ali, to give you some context, they in the past have specialised in war zones, natural disasters, poverty, and yet on this occasion they have been deployed to Central Park. It is an incredible sight, I can say, to see that here in New York City today. Ali.
Yeah, and to think in a few days' time those hospitals will be filled. Thanks, Lexi.
There's been some good news in one of the most famous cases of coronavirus, with Prince Charles now out of isolation. Our Europe correspondent Sophie Walsh is in London this morning. Sophie, this seems a bit early. Does that mean he's recovered?
Well, it means he isn't contagious anymore and he is in good health after spending 7 days in isolation in Scotland. A lot of people questioning why the 71-year-old has been allowed out so soon, but that is per government guidelines here in the UK. Today also there are reports Wimbledon will be officially cancelled later on this week for the first time since World War II. The June event can't really be postponed because it's a grass court and it's all reliant on the condition of the grass. The UK daily death toll has fallen slightly in the past 24 hours to 180. Boris Johnson is still running the country from behind closed doors, and his senior advisor Dominic Cummings has also fallen ill. We saw him racing from Downing Street, there he is, a few days ago. Spain, some more bad news with 812 new deaths, but also a promising sign. The infection rate there appears to be falling, and it could be thanks to these guys here, police, who are spending their days disinfecting the streets to stop the spread of the virus. Alex?
That is a tough job. Sophie Walsh, thank you.
Prince Charles is out, but Dickie's still in. Doesn't make any sense. Well, there are reports Virgin Australia has asked the government for a $1.4 billion taxpayer-funded rescue package to keep the airline afloat. CEO Paul Scurrah signalled the move when he spoke to us last week. So you are going to ask the government for help, though, yes?
We're asking the government to support the sector. There's 600,000 or more than 600,000 people who work in the travel and tourism industry here. We're not advocating just for Virgin to be supported. If this goes on for longer than anyone's predicting, every airline in the world will be asking for government support.
Virgin Australia's final international service took off from Brisbane Airport yesterday. The crew sending the flight off with this heartwarming performance. It certainly is a journey, isn't it? A tough time for all the Virgin workers, and our thoughts are with them at the current time. It looks like there is going to have to be some sort of help for the industry. We'll see what happens.